What is the meaning of life? But before we answer that question, we have to know what is the meaning of, well, meaning. Or how many different types of meaning are there? In this video, I'll introduce you to a philosophy I'm sure you've never heard of before, and it's called Practizm. And Practizm is basically a framework to manage the different interpretations of truths and meaning. I'll get into that in a second. Hey, Slavic Vikings! To answer the question of what meaning means, first we will ask Google. Meaning: important or worthwhile quality or purpose. And this definition doesn't really give us anything, it's kind of just a descriptive synonym, and therefore it just implies that meaning is something subjective. And in our postmodern world, this is something very relevant. Everything in our world is considered subjective, open to interpretation and criticism. Since I was brought up in Western civilization, I also have a postmodern mentality of objective subjectivity. However, this is not only realized through our mentalities, but also through our most valued way of interpreting truth nowadays, and that being science. Even in science, there's no such thing as objective truth, since everything is considered a theory and is recognized for its potential fallibility in future inventions and discoveries. The human mind, and therefore also societal language, is built in such a way that it is impossible not to make estimations or generalizations with every word that you say. Even the sentence I literally just said is a generalization in itself. My point is that the meaning of meaning is complicated, the meaning of anything is complicated, and I also believe that truth is complicated. So now that we've got that over with, let's come back to the original question of what is the meaning of life. Well, of course, what is life? Are viruses alive, etc.? Ignoring that, let's generalize like we always do with every sentence you ever say, and assume the Darwinian's perspective of the meaning of life, and that being to reproduce successfully and achieve generational prosperity. And what I just said there is very important. I was very careful with my wording, since the Darwinian theory of evolution does not just imply that the meaning of life is to spread your seed, since then everybody would just be raping each other, which, to be fair, that happens a lot in nature, but truthfully and deeply Darwinist evolutionary theory claims that the meaning of this evolutionary survival of the fittest is not only to directly spread your genes to future generations, but for those future generations to live in prosperity. What does this mean? Well, this means that if you go around 1 million years ago and just go around raping everyone, well, you might be successful in spreading your genes, but how successful will your children be in spreading your genes even further? In short, it's about the long game, not the short game when it comes to evolution. So evolution does not only look at the individual's success rate in spreading its genes, but the community in which those genes were spread, how successful that community is, how successful that society is. And that's why not only evolution happens through biology, but also culturally, between religions, ideologies, and society, which is why also I believe Christianity is so successful, but I'll get into that later. But this perspective seems very primitive if you consider this the meaning of life. Clearly, us humans see something deeper in our life than just reproducing. How is it possible that philosophers and kings and career people all deeply believe in flourishing and having a successful and meaningful life without having children? How is that possible if they were literally evolved on this earth just to have children? Well, I believe that is because humans have a deep ability of rationality and wisdom. What do I mean by this? Well, let me give you some examples. It might be the biological meaning of a tree to spread its seed. But there is a deep sense of flourishing when a tree grows very tall and is strong and has many leaves. A cheetah might have no babies, but it might be the fastest animal on earth, which I believe creates a deep meaning of flourishing for that animal. It was literally created to be one of the fastest animals on earth. A fish is not only successful if it breeds with another fish, but also if it can swim well and live in its natural environment successfully. A cockroach isn't only successful or fulfilled its life meaning if it created more small cockroaches, but it is successful in its meaning of life when it is resistant to radiation, crushing, and almost all forms of destruction on our Earth. It was created to be one of the most indestructible animals on Earth. Are you seeing where I'm coming to? Each animal has adapted to its environment in such a way that it can be a master of one specific ability or just being able to survive in a specific environment. Every animal is the best at something. And what are humans best at? What are Homo sapiens best at? Well, obviously, the Homo sapiens are best at wisdom, at being smart. Homo sapiens literally translates to wise human. What makes us unique and what makes us humans the most dominant creature on this earth is the fact that we can rationalize and that we can control our emotions, control our desires for future long-term prosperity that comes from the knowledge of our inevitable death. Speaking of death, I believe that the knowledge of death is our biggest weakness. But what do I mean by this? So, I believe that it is a gift from evolution or God that we are so incredibly conscious, so incredibly self-conscious and introspective and rational that we have the ability to prepare for almost anything and almost any environment on Earth. This is our gift. This is what allows us to dominate and be the best creatures on Earth. That's right, I am racist. I'm deeply racist for humans. I believe that humans were created to dominate this Earth. There's no other animal that deserves as much respect as humans do. But I digress. My point was that with the gift of living in Eden, living with the highest intelligence in the world, living as animals that are able to rationalize our existence, we also took a bite of the forbidden fruit and have to live with the consequences. The consequences of our consciousness, and that being our consciousness of our inevitable death. And religion is another way to cope with that. Not cope in a bad way, in a very good way actually, since I deeply believe that humans cannot live without a religion. We are literally too smart. But I'll get into that later. Right now I would like to focus on the philosophy of Practizm. However, I might have slightly exaggerated the wisdom of humans, since we are only that smart, we only seem this smart, compared to the rest of the stupid animals on this earth. Compared to the barbarian dogs, the barbarian monkeys, birds and all that shit. Oh, we seem so smart, blah, blah, blah. Look at me being so smart human. But that is only compared to other animals. In reality, humans are still deeply irrational, deeply emotional, and we need a lot of things to flourish and to be happy. And many of those things are not rational. And therefore, I do believe that through rationality, we can accept this fact. Through rationality, we can accept the fact that we have emotional needs, we have needs that do not directly come from rationality, and that these have nothing to do with objective truth of the universe. I do not understand why society is unable to separate objective truth from the truths of human existence. There are things that apply to the human experience, to the experience of human life, to the experience of society, and then there are separate things that come from the spectrum of probability, the spectrum of science that show us what the universe really is. Those things do not mix at all. However, society does tend to mix it, and an example of that is the Bible. So first of all, I've mentioned in my previous videos on philosophy that the way that we refer to God, or any metaphysical being in fact, is not how people used to refer to them hundreds or thousands of years ago. These ideas of God, angels, good, virtue and evil all had very deep philosophical implications behind them that have nothing to do with the traditional modern sense of the words. Only through the extreme development of the scientific method we are able to conceptualize things that could be considered as objective reality. This was not the case for hundreds of thousands of years. And remember, the human beings 2000 years ago were just as smart as we are nowadays. They just had different knowledge, different inventions and technology. So therefore the way they interpreted the world was not less sophisticated, just different from a different perspective. For example, I am an atheist, but I believe there is a lot of truth in the Bible. I believe in the Bible. The truth is one of a different kind. Instead of believing in the fantastical stories literally, there is a lot of deep, practical truth, which is not any less truth than our metaphysical truth, than our real informational truth. Anecdotal conclusions from stories in the Bible provide deep lessons for an individual and society. And I believe that the writers of the Bible meant it to be interpreted in that non-literal, practical way. For the average stupid peasant, however, throughout the millennia, interpreting such religious texts like in the Bible in a very literal way, with literal stories, with literal consequences of going to hell, for example, has the same practical effects as the more philosophical interpretation of such texts. And since such texts like the Bible had such practical truth inside them, they were able to spread around the world through evolution, through survival of the fittest. Specifically focusing on Christianity, societies that were Christian were more successful than those that weren't. And that is because humans are not rational and we function better with a religion or ideology or philosophy. That's why if you are religious or believe in a God, you might not have specific scientific proof of your belief, and annoying atheists keep going up to you and being like, there's no scientific truth for what you believe in, but deep inside, you feel a connection to your religion, to your God, and deep inside, you know that thanks to your religion, you feel better, you're more clear in your mind, you're happier, and you feel more connected to the universe. These feelings are real, and religion provides true truth and value in this specific practical way. Why on earth would you stop believing in God? Why would you stop believing in a God if it's so practical? If it's so much better for your human existence? Well, the only reason you would ever stop believing in such a religion is if you somehow value the scientific literature above your religious feelings. And this is kind of where things get complicated, since deep inside, I believe that there is no meaning to life, that we're all gonna die alone, that life is a lucky coincidence that will disappear in a couple of years, and nothing you do has any inherent meaning. But this is purely my metaphysical belief, my belief that comes from my estimation of the probability of how the world really works based on the current scientific knowledge of society. This has nothing to do with my personal beliefs or my beliefs of how to live a good life or how to achieve happiness. In fact, I believe these things contradict each other greatly. However, I digress, since I will talk more about religion later in this video. For now, please let me read you the official definition of Practizm based on the school of Meum Asinum. Practizm is a philosophical framework that recognizes and manages the dichotomy between metaphysical beliefs and practical beliefs. It operates on the premise that one's personal metaphysical truths should not directly dictate the actionable principles by which they live or how they think they should live. Instead, Practizm emphasizes the importance of practical truths, or principles that can be applied directly to the reality of the human existence. These practical values are considered the guiding forces for daily behavior, decision-making, and goal setting. Practizm encourages individuals to consciously delineate and document these values, fostering a life that actively reflects on them through constant feedback. In doing so, it allows for a harmonious coexistence of potentially contradictory philosophical and existential beliefs with a pragmatic and structured approach to living. The core of Practizm lies in its focus on the application and realization of practical truths in one's life, ensuring that actions and decisions are aligned with these consciously chosen values, thereby providing a sense of direction and purpose. Practizm does not assume any ideology, philosophy, or religion is superior to any other, recognizing that everyone has a different need and desire. However, Practizm does put value and describes virtuously those who are honest with themselves by living by their practical truths. Practizm is an offshoot of Stoicism, since through the control of your emotions and only focusing on the changeable, you can achieve Practizmic tranquillity and virtue. Living according to your values and daily self-reflection is also taken from Stoicism, albeit expanded on greatly. That might not have made any sense to you, so let me give you a shorter definition. Practizm is an offshoot of Stoicism that claims that the highest virtue in life is following your values, simply put, by ideologically believing your metaphysical truth and living out your practical truth. What this means is you can have totally contradictory beliefs to how you live your life versus how you think the universe operates. Practizm is not a moral framework. Practizm is not a real philosophy or anything close to a religion. Instead, Practizm is a form of a rational framework, a framework about how to interpret the truth around you. The dichotomy of truth is deeply embedded in Practizm, and I truly believe that if everybody applied Practizm to their daily life by living out their practical values, by living out the way they deeply believe they should live, and separating that from their religious beliefs, society would be much more successful. And only through meddling of these different types of truths, society degenerates. In the earlier official definition of Practizm, you might have heard some mentions of how to practically apply this Practizm to your life. How do I live by my values, and how do I separate them? Well, in short, self-reflection by, for example, in your notes, by meditation. There's a whole book of ways to apply Practizm to live a more happy and virtuous life. However, if this video gets 100 likes, I'll make a part 2 on a video on Practizm where I'll explain concrete ways to apply Practizm to your daily life, to apply practical truths to your life so you can live a eudaimonic and happy life. Focusing more on the dichotomy of truth, I would like to mention my perspective on religion. So if you watched some of my earlier political or philosophical videos, you probably know that I'm a huge liberal. I'm sorry to admit this, guys, but like I mentioned in the start of this video, this is purely a label. A label that I identify with because it mostly applies to me, but like I said, everything in our human language are huge generalizations, and especially when it comes to names of ideologies, communism, capitalism, liberty, libertarianism, all of these are huge generalizations. And remember when I just told you I'm a liberal? Well, I lied, because I'm not a liberal. No one is a liberal, because the truth is every individual has a mix of different beliefs. You are a mix of capitalist beliefs and communist beliefs, conservative and progressive, etc., etc. Only reactionary politicians and streamers or something who are fighting like an ideological war and aren't real humans who live their life as normal have purely ideological beliefs. That's not how most humans function. Most humans are a mix of beliefs. And I am one of those, of course, and therefore I have some more conservative, more traditional beliefs when it comes to certain aspects of life, and that being religion. Since, like you probably understood from this video already, I am deeply religious while being an atheist. How does this make sense? Well, I'll explain to you. Or I thought I fucking did already. I explained to you the dichotomy of truth. You can believe in two things at once. I do not believe in a god. I do not believe in any metaphysical alternate reality. You can believe in that, but that should not impact anything you do in your life. Instead, I believe that some sort of religious moral framework is needed to live a eudaimonic or happy life. Eudaimonia is kind of a complicated word. It comes from ancient Greek philosophy and it basically means a state of flourishing, a state of happiness that doesn't come from the feeling of happiness, but a sense of flourishing and being successful and virtuous in your life. And I truly believe that that is my meaning in life, at least. And the way to achieve that is by having a strict moral framework. And for me, that is Stoicism. It honestly just fits more to my character and values. The values of reason, productivity, self-control, integrity, temperance, courage, justice, all that shit, and dignity. All of those things are in Stoicism because the ancient philosophers considered how to live a proper and virtuous life as part of morality. I don't know why in modern society we just dropped off how to live life from morality. There's no objective way how to live life, etc. This video is already much longer than I wanted. I kind of rambled a lot. It didn't have much structure, and this is my first like real philosophical video. This is something I'm really passionate about. I love philosophy, and I hope you enjoyed my introduction to Practizm. Like I said, if this video gets to 100 likes, that will be some indication that like there's some interest in this type of content. So if this video gets 100 likes, I'll make a part 2 on Practizm, where I will talk about how to practically apply your practical truths to your daily life and how to separate your metaphysical beliefs from your practical beliefs in practice. I think you're starting to get where the name Practizm comes from. But yeah, anyway, if you want to check out my other videos on philosophy, please check out the philosophy playlist. Please consider subscribing. And as always, farewell, żegnam, and goodbye.